Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Institute of Architects Grand Valley Chapter Annual Awards Ceremony. And your host, straight from the Academy Awards, Billy Crystal. Almost.
There's no business like show business, like no business I know. Even with a turkey, you know, won't go far. The curtain rises, hello, there you are. Next night on your dressing room, they'll hang a star. Let's go on with the show.
Whoa, what an honor to be here to officiate at the American Institute of Architects Grand Valley Chapter Award Ceremony. Oscar, aren't you proud? I'm telling you, both of us are proud to be here, and look at you. You look marvelous. I am sure that the grand in Grand Valley is because of the grand weather that you guys have here all the time. I mean, coming out from Hollywood, you got your rain, you got your snow. You could hold the Winter Olympics 6 months out of the year here. But what really makes this a grand place is you. The American Institute of Architects Grand Valley Chapter. I mean, look around. You're sitting in a room full of architects and engineers. You were the little kids who grew up making little models and drawing little pictures of houses when you were kids. And now you're grown up and, well, you do the same thing, only you get paid big bucks for it, right? Sure, you're the ones whose mothers always used to say, why are you always drawing these pictures? And now they say, my son, he's an architect. He draws pictures. My mother, of course, she was always just trying to kill me with food. You know what I mean? Constantly saying, eat all your food. Billy, clean up your plate. Think of the starving children in China. Think of the starving children in China. When I did my first Pacific Rim tour, I went to Japan and China. Guess what I saw? A bunch of fat schlubs, these sumo wrestlers eating with two hands. I never believed my mother again. But I do have a member of my family who is an architect. Uncle Leo Schmutnik. That's right. Maybe you've heard of him. Of course, when I called Leo and told him I was going to be here, you know what he said? Architect schmarchitect. They don't even draw anymore. They just punch the buttons on the computer. Of course, Uncle Leo's old and everything in his generation was tougher. You know what I mean? Is it that same way with you guys? I mean, if I say I'm sick, he says, what? 103? You call that a fever? That's not a fever. I was dead for 3 days and didn't even know it. I only came back to life because the Jews have a sense of humor. But of course, that's my Uncle Leo. I mean, he thinks everything was tougher in his day. But I know that the architects that we've got here today, I mean, look at the luminaries in this room here tonight. Hey, there's past President Fred Wesolowski. Fred, you look marvelous. But Fred, are you going to Don King's hairstylist? I mean, what is this with the hair everywhere? I mean, it looks good on you, Fred. Hey, there's Bob Daverman. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Daverman, past president here. Of course, he doesn't know he's the past president. Bob still thinks he's the president. I mean, he's in everything, and I know how much you appreciate all of Bob's hard work. But Bob, past, that means you're not president anymore. Anyway, hey, and there's Tom Matheson. Now, Tom, congratulations on all those awards. Why, if Tom wore all of his architectural awards, he'd have more jewelry and bling-bling than P. Diddy. But, of course, Tom would never do that. Because, as you know, Tom is a very cultured architect, right? I mean, a very polished kind of guy. Here's something you may not know. Tom actually used to work in construction. Sure. 20 years ago, he was a field foreman in construction, and Fred Wesolowski worked for him. I hope, Fred, you don't mind me telling this one, but you see, Tom and Fred worked on the same crew. Tom was the foreman, and Fred was down in the ditch digging ditches. Fred was down there with his buddy Earl, and Earl said, Fred, how come we're down here digging ditches? And look at Tom Matheson up there. Tom is up there standing by his truck drinking his Diet Coke. How come we're down here digging a ditch in the heat, and he's up there drinking a Diet Coke? You know. Fred said, I don't know. I'll go find out. So Fred crawled up out of the ditch, goes over to Tom, and says, excuse me, Mr. Matheson, I wonder if I could ask you, how come we're digging ditches down here, and you're up here by your truck? Well, of course, Tom says, Fred, what are you doing up here? You should be down there digging ditches. Besides, the reason that I'm up here and you're down there is called ingenuity. Now get back down there. Okay, thank you. Well, Fred goes back down the hole, and his buddy Earl says, so, what did he tell you? He said, well, he says he's got ingenuity and we don't. His buddy Earl said, what's ingenuity? Fred said, I don't know. I'll go ask him. So he crawls back up. Mr. Matheson. Tom said, what are you doing out of the hole? Get back down there. You're supposed to be digging. He said, sir, I just need you to tell me what ingenuity is. Tom says, I cannot explain this to you. This is such a concept. I mean, the only way I could do it would be to demonstrate it. And Fred said, okay, fine, show me. Tom says, all right. He puts his Diet Coke down. He takes his hand and he places it right on the hood of his truck. And he said, hit my hand just as hard as you can. Fred said, Mr. Matheson, if I do that, I might bust your hand. Hey, just go ahead, Fred. Just hit it as hard as you can. So sure enough, with his hand on the trunk of his hood, Fred backs up and bang, only right at that moment, Tom pulls his hand out of the way. Boom! Oh, he hits the Ford hood and, man, I think I nearly broke my hand. Tom Matheson looks at Fred and says, that is ingenuity. Now get back down there in the hole. Fred crawls back down in the hole, and Earl says, what's the answer? What's ingenuity? Fred says, it's so difficult, he had to demonstrate it. He said, well, show me. Fred says, okay, I'll show you. But he looked around, and there was nothing but dirt on the walls. All of a sudden, Fred said, okay, Earl, here. Hit my hand just as hard as you can. I know. There's a lot of ingenuity in all of the architectural groups out there. But Tom and Fred, you guys are both ingenious. As a matter of fact, most architects from the very beginning of their lives, they think differently. Somebody put it to me the other day this way. If you come along and you see a man stuck in a hole in the ground, the pessimist says, you're never going to get out of there. The optimist says, sure, one day you'll get out of there. The architect comes along and says, there should have been a set of staircases designed in that hole so you could come out of there easily. And of course, the contractor walks up and says, well, I could build you some stairs in that hole, but it's going to take an extra 6 weeks and an extra $75,000. And finally, the city code inspector walks up and says, excuse me, do you have a permit for occupying that hole? And when he finds out you don't, he's going to fine you. Architects are people who look at the world in a wonderful way. They think immediately to the problem. Like, take Mark Levine. You guys know Mark, of course. Mark loves to golf. Well, the other day I heard that Mark was golfing with a couple of his friends from Rotary. You know, there was a minister and a lawyer and a doctor. And they were golfing at the country club when all of a sudden this foursome in front of them, it seems like from the very first hole, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Balls were flying every which way. It was going to take them forever. Mark had an afternoon appointment. He said, look, I'm sorry, gentlemen, but I want to do something about this. He saw a course marshal go by and he pulled him over. He said, excuse me, sir, can you tell me, what are these guys doing? We pay good money to play here in the country club. Well, the course marshal said, Mark, don't you recognize those guys? Those guys are the 3 firemen who saved those children from the orphanage fire. When the gas boiler blew up, they're nearly blind. And that 4th guy, that's our course pro. Mark said, oh yeah, I recognize him. Says we let him play here every Tuesday afternoon as just a gesture of kindness from the community. Oh, well, you know, Mark, he felt awful. The doctor immediately felt the same way. He said, here, give him my card. I know an ophthalmic surgeon who maybe could help him. The lawyer said, here, give him my card. Maybe I could get some money from their insurance company to pay for it. The minister said, here, give him my card. And maybe we could put him on the prayer list at church. Mark looked at him and said, why don't you have him play at night? You see, architects just think differently. They just look at it differently. But there's room for architects, and not only here in Grand Valley. There's room for architects in Hollywood. I have a little secret to let you in on. The American Institute of Architects Grand Valley chapter has planned a special kind of fundraiser. They've decided that they're going to remake some old classic movies, and even some new movies, but they're going to remake them with architects in the roles of actors. You see, if they use architects as the starring role, think of all the problems that you could solve just like that. First off, you wouldn't have any of those big egos involved with the project. Okay, well, maybe that's not realistic. But you wouldn't have to pay them big salaries, right? Well, that's not realistic either. At least you wouldn't have those wild parties, except maybe when a shipment of mechanical pencils come in. So, let me show you, if you'd let me, the new production company. First off, here's their logo. Yep, that's right. It's the Architects Syndicated Studio Entertainment Service. Yeah, I know, the acronym's going to have to be changed, but here, let me show you some of the movies that they're looking at redoing. This one, Polar Express. Now, that was a big hit, right? So instead of in the remake in Polar Express 2, instead of Tom Hanks, they decided to use Jeff Hammond. Perfect, right? He loves to play with trains. The guy from Spectrum Health, of course. Now, a great golfing movie, you guys remember Caddyshack? Well, who else would they put in the lead role of that except for Mark Levine? Yeah, he'd be perfect. He looks exactly like him. Here, take a look at this. I was so sad when Mr. Rogers passed away. I mean, he was such a nice guy. So they're going to remake Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, only they're going to call it Mr. Baldwin's Neighborhood. Look at that bow tie. I mean, it fits perfectly in the shot there. Peter Baldwin from AMDG. Now, a big hit with teenagers last year was Napoleon Dynamite. Yeah, I know it was a goofy film, but imagine if the remake of it stars Marvin Riedel from Paradigm Design. I mean, look, Marvin's got the face for it. He's got the hair for it. It's perfect. And last but not least, a little something sexy for the ladies. What about a remake of that classic film, American Gigolo? And instead of that gear guy, why, Mike Corby, you're perfect. Absolutely. The women will be swooning over that integrated architect. But for me, I personally think that what would really sell would be a Broadway musical. I mean, imagine that. We could put it on Broadway. The story of the life of architects. I mean, wouldn't that be riveting? We could call it The Sound of Blueprints. It would open with an architect late at night, bent over his drawings. I could have drawn all night to try and get it right and win that big award. The gang at Beta Design had finished theirs just fine, and Hooker DeLong was done by 9. But I just know that when my client sees it, he'll want to change on every page. But that's okay with me, because what it spells, you see, is just one big change fee. I mean, don't you think? Can't you see, a dancing line of architects one way or another, and then the scene shifts. It shifts to an architect out on the building site. And there he is when a big black car pulls up. Yes, and it has the code inspector in it. Perfect. I mean, really. They've got height codes and depth codes, material strength codes, codes about zoning, the change when the wind blows, codes about everything that you can think. Those are the things that make me want to drink. I mean, think about it. You got codes on codes. Codes about ceilings and codes about floorings. Codes about footings and bracings and moorings. Whatever official thought up these demands surely has way too much time on his hands. Just when I have followed every stinking one, I turn around twice and they send out some new guy with a book full of brand new codes. And I know how difficult it is, because actually a friend of mine who was an architect called up the other night and said, "Man, I just woke up from a terrible nightmare." I said, "What was your nightmare?" He said, "I was in a room with 3 chairs. In one chair was tied up Osama bin Laden. In another chair was tied up Hitler. And in another chair was tied up the city building inspector. I had a revolver in my hand, but there were only 2 bullets in it." I said, "What'd you do?" He said, "What do you think I did? I shot the building inspector twice." No, I know that's not how you really feel about the building inspector, but you are passionate about certain things, aren't you? I mean, be honest now. You're passionate about design, about excellence, and that's why you're here tonight. Because this Oscar really goes to you. The designers, the architects, the engineers of the American Institute of Architects Grand Valley chapter, you are designing our tomorrow. There's no folks like AIA folks. They smile when they are low. Whether you're designing the next Taj Mahal or maybe just sprucing up a Walmart mall, magic happens when your blueprints are on the wall. So dream, architects dream. Our future's drawing on you. Congratulations from Hollywood to all the AIA Grand Valley Award winners. You look marvelous.